Hey everybody, welcome to my review of The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, the second film in the franchise trilogy, and I would like to start off by saying there will be spoilers, because it is called a review, not a preview. Obviously, since we are talking about a film adaptation of a book, there are going to be a lot of things that the filmmakers have left out, or included, or changed for various reasons, and you sort of have to be forgiving and understanding, and I will try to do that. But I'll also try to be appreciative of a lot of the things that they have included from the text. Being a longtime fan, I avoided any sort of midnight premiere, festivities, etc. around the Desolation of Smaug because I was just so disappointed with an unexpected journey. However, let me say that Desolation of Smaug has rekindled my hope for the franchise, for the most part. My two biggest complaints would be, one, when the movie turns into video game again, it seems like they just can't get away from that. Remember Goblin Town when the scaffold was falling down, and two, when they were running down the corridor with the boulder. That was very Nintendo-like, and it just kind of made us all cringe a little bit, how hokey it was. Number two is the numerous Lord of the Rings throwbacks, sometimes word for word. Now I understand the need of the filmmakers to make us go, oh yeah, Gimli said that in The Two Towers, and it's funny then, and it's funny now. But after about half a dozen or so of these moments, it really kind of feels like you're watching a Marvel movie. They have all these moments that make you geek out with nostalgia instead of just creating a new moment that is equally as touching and memorable. I thought the overall storyline didn't have any major problems. The pacing of the movie started off slow, very skeptical at first. I thought it was going to be a very slow journey again. Picked up as the film went on, although it was very long. But still, if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, Middle-earth, you'll probably want as much as you can get. I got bored in like 20-30 minutes. I felt like really long, that opening sequence. And finally, when they went into Mirkwood, I feel like that's when the adventure really began. Thankfully, we didn't have to wait, 40 minutes like we did in the first movie. As a fan of the books, it was really cool to see all that character exposition being carried out. As a moviegoer, you are somewhat trained to watch movies and expect more to happen in that period. So, this one was a good continuation. However, if you're not as enamored with Tolkien's writings and are just a regular moviegoer, you're going to probably think this movie's a little too long. We open up with a flashback of Gandalf meeting Thorin for the first time. First character we see is, of course, Peter Jackson's cameo, munching on that carrot 60 years before he was eating another carrot in the Fellowship of the Ring. Okay, maybe it's a son, like father, like son, right? Thornhill, however, is the real star of the show. Jackson, Boyens, Walsh, you guys have my permission to make a trilogy based just on his character. With this being a film adaptation, there's a lot of things in the book that have gone from being in months and weeks to just mere hours. And those orcs that they added in, chasing them, just adds a sense of urgency that wasn't so much in the books. Going through the list of characters, we first meet Beorn, who is a skin changer, turns into a bear with a tail. I don't know if bears with tails exist, but it's still pretty cool. And I was happy to see that they did not have just another CGI'd character like all the orcs and goblins have been in the first movie, which I think really just killed a lot of that realness of it. Beorn plays a minor role. They probably could have just left him out completely, but I'm glad that they put the effort in to help progress the plot a little bit. Next we see Legolas and Tauriel. Tauriel is a completely made-up character by Jackson and Boyens. And I understand the need for that female character to sort of shift the scales of male dominance in this movie. Sort of playing the role very similar to Arwen. Keep that in mind, because there are a lot of similar scenes, unfortunately. Legolas, I know that he's already hundreds of years old, but frankly he acts a lot like a teenager in this movie. Not so much breaking the rules, but just being kind of a grump and sort of that superior attitude that we don't really like in elves. Whereas he was a very kind of a gentle person in Lord of the Rings, so sort of somewhere along the line maybe he made that transformation. When we met Bard, I'm really glad that he wasn't speaking iambic pentameter, almost like in the trailer. He seemed like a pretty real character, just a single dad, taking care of his kids, trying to do good, hated by all the evil in the town. Stephen Fry was perfectly despicable as the Lake Town Master. Good job there, especially the teeth. Love the teeth. There's a character named Alfred who is the servant of the Master of Lake Town, who shares a striking resemblance to Grima Wormtongue. Not just in demeanor, although they did something here. I won't tell you what, you'll know it when you see it. Then there's the Necromancer. There's a lot of development on his character, who's very ambiguous in the first film, and I will not spoil anything because that is a really big point. You may have already guessed it. Now we come to the last but not least, the chiefest of calamities, Smaug the Dragon. The CGI team did not spare any amount of detail in crafting this really brilliant dragon. I thought it was just excellent. It's kind of weird to see a dragon with a mouth that's that long go, ooh, making the O sounds, but it's more realistic that way, I guess. Now with Smaug, there's a lot of really cool interaction with him and the characters. It's not so distanced and one-on-one with just him and Bilbo like in the books. That was really cool to see. He gets a lot of dialogue in and a lot of cool action. So going to the main characters that have carried over from the first one, first and foremost, Gandalf. Gandalf seems to be holding back a lot of his powers until he actually really needs them in a life or death circumstance. I don't know why that is, but maybe he feels the dwarves should just do their own dirty work. Radagast makes a brief appearance. Well, we sort of knew that from the trailer. Actually, you saw the full extent of his appearances on the trailer. Bilbo, still the most perfectly cast Martin Freeman, doesn't really develop too much. The story seems to focus mainly on Thorin, who I don't end up hating as much as I did the first film. He had a lot of, frankly, very annoying, a lot of issues with a lot of bitterness that really just made him kind of an unbearable character, because he would just say these really bad one-liners, and he refrained from these in this film for the most part. Still kind of weird that the king of the dwarves has like the shortest beard, save Achilles. Onto the dwarves, our conniving band of misfits. The dwarves overall still remain unbelievably coordinated, although not so much as that plate-throwing song from the first film, and not as hokey either. There's just too much going on for them to have those moments, although I wish that they would have given Bombur a line. It's been 2 films and he hasn't said a single word. He just grunts and fights, runs. That's it. I'm hoping he gets some dialogue in the new movie. Azog, the Defiler, the white orc with the most uniformly shaped scars I have ever seen, still remains digital, of course. Why would you change that? And he actually takes a role much like Saruman, just sort of staying back, making sure that the building of some secret big army is going according to plan and evil. Onto the orcs. They actually made me very happy with real people in costumes versus just all of them being digitized. One thing that really hurt the first film for me was just that every orc, goblin was just digitized. CGI, no people in costumes, whereas everyone being real in The Fellowship of the Ring, which is part of what made it such an effective film. In this film, I would say about a quarter to a third of them actually are real people. At some point you do get tired of seeing CGI and sort of having to go, you know? But when they're actually people in costumes, it adds that realness to it, and it just makes them look even worse and more ugly, and it's great, and I love it. Another thing that hurt the first film was just the music. Howard Shore, you did great with The Lord of the Rings. It was nothing like we've ever heard before, and then you started recycling content, and I think that with this film, there are actually some original themes coming back instead of playing the Nazgul theme for Azog. Instead of replaying motifs from movies like Hugo. That was weird for me to see and to hear. There are so many parts where silence is the best soundtrack. For example, when Gandalf is shooting the big bubble thing. I wasn't a big fan of the big bubble thing. It was a little too Harry Potter for me, and I'm not going to spoil it, but it's a bubble. It's quiet on the inside of the bubble, it's loud on the outside of the bubble. But that quiet is a really beautiful moment. It lasts for, I'd have to say, 3/4 of a second. Another thing, when they finally get into the mountain, spoilers, yeah, we all know what was going to happen. But that door opens, suspenseful music plays. It was really just more of a moment of triumph where I think silence would have been good, and that awe where the dwarves can look at each other and go, it's our home. There were some new motifs in the film, like the theme for Lake Town. That was promising. To be honest, I'd have to really watch it again or just give the soundtrack a listen before I make any more thoughts on it. Some of the most impactful moments in Lord of the Rings for me were the title cards with the big establishing shot that they have at the beginning. This one, the music kind of ruined that for me. Sorry, Howard. Music like that is somewhat too invasive. They're forcing these emotional reactions that are supposed to just come naturally and supposed to flow instead of being distracting and being a little overbearing at times. At some point you get tired of seeing elves effortlessly killing orcs. Just the, oh, there goes the head. Bam, bam. I wasn't even looking behind me, but I got one. It just kind of gets old, you know? At some point you have to remind yourself that there are adults writing some of these hokey scenes in a room where they say, wouldn't it be cool if the barrel bounced and took out some orcs here and then bounced over there and took out some orcs and then unbelievably bounced again and took out more orcs. And then did this weird Crash Bandicoot tornado of axes. Okay. The kids are gonna love it, sure. For the most part, the CGI is pretty well done. I remember at the end of Unexpected Journey when Smaug's eye opens and a lot of those coins just sort of disappear into his head. That really kind of made me cringe. With this one, I understand that it's really CGI heavy. There's no way you're going to be able to build a hall that big and have all these gold coins. But for some of those wide shots where Bilbo's walking and you see just gold coins only, and then they have a closer shot and suddenly they're chests that popped out of nowhere and detail like gems and vases, etc., tables. That's kind of weird, and I want to say a little bit lazy on the CGI part. I know you guys have a deadline to meet and all, but kind of an obvious downside there. Concerning the ending of the film, a lot of people will be kind of disappointed at how it ends, and a lot of people will be really happy, like me. To be honest, I was actually very nervous how much they're going to be able to fit into the third film after covering this much in the first two, considering that there's like that much of the book left afterwards. I want to say that it's just a coincidence that it ends a lot like the Hunger Games Catching Fire, which just came out a month ago. Thranduil's great. He's not just a pretentious elf snob. He's actually kind of got this little crazy-eyed side to him, which is really cool, and I can't wait for them to expound a little bit more on that in the next film. One thing that really bothered me was when the dwarves arrive at the side of the Lonely Mountain and they are trying to get to the secret entrance and they give up so easily. It's like, well, all that was for nothing, let's go home. And then of course little Bilbo has to save the day. You hear a lot about the stubbornness of dwarves, but in this case they just sort of seem defeated. Thorin makes that seamless transition from being just bitter and hurt to being greedy and somewhat selfish. It was really cool to see all the dwarves working together to actually fight against the dragon. That was probably one of my favorite sequences in the movie. At some parts a little surreal, but hey, suspend disbelief and just enjoy the fantasy, right? Sure. Two more things I want to cover that helped with the overall experience of the movie. Ed Sheeran's I See Fire. Great song. After hearing that Far Over Misty Mountains Cold kind of pub sounding thing at the end of Unexpected Journey, I was really glad that they picked a song that is just so powerful, I would say is a good word. Really good track. And then the other thing is I watched the movie with the high frame rate 3D. I am the only person I know that actually prefers to watch movies looking like soap operas. And I'm not saying that sarcastically. With the high frame rate 3D, the first scene is what I call the adjusting scene. It's where you get used to it looking really corny, and then after a while you sort of start to see it look really kind of cool. And they still can't eliminate motion blur. That's kind of a bummer, but oh well. I see it as sort of a unique option to change the experience of movie watching, and of course, anytime you see it at home, it'll just be that 24 frames per second. So, not as hokey as the first film, certainly not as slow. Thranduil's the best. Overall, I'd give the Desolation of Smaug a good, I'd say, 4 out of 5 gold coins. It really changed my perspective on how this third movie is going to be. I remember even watching the trailers going, oh, no, it's not. It looks bad. But it delivered, and I'm happy with the overall product. I'm sure if I watch it again, there'll be a lot of things that I missed that I'll just kind of want to throw in here, but overall I hope this kind of shares your thoughts on the experience or helped you see something differently. And let me know what you think somewhere in the comment box, the subscribe box. A lot of things you guys are really smart and you'll figure out what you like and what you don't like. There are a lot of things you're going to disagree with me on, and you're going to say, well, I'm glad you liked it, or I can't believe you didn't like that. Hey, I understand. No worries, no hurt feelings. I think that's about covered everything. Tell me what you guys thought of the movie. Subscribe wherever the box is. I know YouTube likes to change their layout to sort of laugh at all those people that point in one certain spot. Say subscribe here, and then they put it over there. I'm really looking forward to seeing There and Back again. It's guaranteed to be epic. So, till next year, I guess. Ciao.